Is that better? Can you hear me now? I know there's a little bit of delay, but hopefully everything's working now. On my end, it shows that I have audio. I can see the volume going up and down. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. Sorry that wasn't going through. If anyone has... Okay, good. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask me. Otherwise, I'll keep explaining what I was talking about. What I'm talking about, I did put into a video that I've already posted. This would help out with my current college students. But yeah, hopefully this is helpful for everyone else too. So if you were conducting an original study, these are kinds of sections that you could expect to find in that paper. Now, I teach upper level high school students and lower level college students, right? In most cases, you're not going to be going out conducting original research. What you're going to be doing in a research paper is more like a literature review, where you may have your teacher say, all right, go write a research paper on insert topic here, right? And then you're going to be like, okay, what do I do? It might look something like this, though if you haven't studied research design, your teachers probably don't expect you to explain how you found your sources like you would in a research design and methodology section. They probably wouldn't expect that. So yours probably has some sort of introduction. You're going to have the topics that you're talking about and some sort of conclusion. It's going to feel like an essay. But the difference is, research, it doesn't have to be biased. It can draw conclusions, but it's not trying to prove a point. Okay? And this is really important, that they're not trying to prove a point, so that you can trust the results that they're presenting. Because if they are biased and they are presenting results, then how do you know that you can trust it in the first place? Does that make sense? It's going to feel like you're listening to a political speech, and you have to decide whether you have to agree with it or not. And that's not a good situation for research. You want to be able to trust the research without any sort of bias in it at all. So, all right. So these are the kinds of things you can expect. And if you're on the website, I have linked to actual papers that I was able to find through Google Scholar. So they there shouldn't be anything blocking you from, you don't have to log in or anything. And this explains each of those things. So I hope that this is helpful for everyone who logged into the live stream. Thank you for doing that. Sorry that we had some sound issues. Sound. Okay, so what's your question about critical thinking? I know we've got a little bit of a delay, so I'm just waiting for an answer. I can talk a bit about critical thinking, but I might be a little bit off track from answering your question if without a little bit more information. So when we're talking... Okay, so critical thinking, let's talk a little bit about the difference between analysis and persuasive writing, because I think that answers the question that we have. Thank you. All right. In informative writing and persuasive writing and research writing, in all the situations, you can use critical thinking. Critical thinking is you are understanding a situation deeply and you are explaining it, right? This is very similar to the process that you use when you're writing research. If you are writing research, you have to use critical thinking, but there's a step that you don't need to take, which is to tell people what they need to do with the information. That's a difference between persuasive writing and some form of informative writing. They can all use critical thinking in that you are understanding a situation deeply and you are explaining and you're justifying it. You're going to justify it by using evidence to back you up. This could be statistics from a study. This could be, this study says this source says this, person, expert says this. That's backing yourself up. You're not biased yet. Bias is when you stop looking at all sides of an issue. That would be biased. Bias can also be if you start telling other people what they need to do. That's when you have picked a side and you're telling other people to pick that side too. That's when we veer off of presenting information and now we are telling people what to do with it. That is not required in research. That is not required in informative writing. That is required in persuasive writing. So if you're in a class where you have to write an essay and your teacher wants you to be argumentative, to make a point, to back it up, to be persuasive, or let's say you're doing some sort of a speech for a public speaking class and they're asking you to be persuasive, yeah, that's more than just critical thinking. You're trying to convince your audience of something. That's not research. You can present research in persuasive writing, but the kind of research we're talking about here, it's not going to do that because it gives the reader a reason to not believe them or to trust them. If you see bias in research, you should be very nervous because it's not professional to be biased in academic research. One of the absolute great things about academic research is that they show their work, they explain, all right, this was my question. There's going to be some sort of research question. They're going to say, this was my question, and I went and I did a study to try and answer that. We went and we gave a survey. These were the people we surveyed. This is how we made sure that everything was valid and reliable. You can do that. You're not biased yet. Even if you look at the information and you say, this is what I think the findings of the study mean, you're not biased. When you start saying, all right, and because of this, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, you should think this way, you should feel this way, you should act this way, that's when you're verging onto persuasive writing, because now you're telling people what to do with the information. That's something that the academic researcher isn't going to do in their paper. That's something if you see a journalist who's writing an opinion piece and they're reporting on a study that they found, some new research about the coronavirus or whatever the situation is, and they're saying, so because of this, you should stay home, you should social distance, you should whatever. That's not what an academic researcher is going to say. Academic researcher is going to say, research shows or findings suggest that, staying home and, avoiding whatever is going to help flatten the curve. They're going to be very careful with how they word things. Someone who's being persuasive, they're going to use different language that is, that's going to tell you what to do with it, right? Let's say we're talking about different kind of critical thinking. You're talking about an English paper. You've read a story or something like that. Probably not research at this point. You may be asked to write a critical analysis about a short story or a poem or a play or something like that. You can analyze it. You can break it down. You can explain it, and that's fine. It doesn't necessarily have to be persuasive writing. You're going to back it up. You're going to explain it. And maybe you bring in an outside source to provide some context or to back you up in something that you're saying. That can use critical thinking, but it's not telling the reader, and this is the only correct answer, and if you don't believe me, then you're stupid or whatever, right? There are different kinds of writing. Critical thinking is a process that can influence how you write, but it's something that's going to happen before writing. Does that make sense? It's just going to manifest itself in the kind of writing that you're doing. The kind of writing that you're doing is going to help determine your purpose, right? If you're writing about literature, for example, cool. What's your purpose? Well, I'm supposed to analyze this. Cool. Use critical thinking. All right. So you're going to use critical thinking to make a point about a story. Ultimately, is it persuasive? Sure. But also one of the great things about literature, when we're writing about literature, is there's an understanding. There's more than one interpretation. So you don't really have to convince people of anything. You just have to back it up. And that's the only thing you can do. Because the stakes of the situation are not, oh, if they don't believe me, then I failed. No. As long as you backed it up, you're okay. Right? So that's a very conventional English paper. But let's say you're asked to write an essay, a persuasive essay. This is the best cell phone carrier or whatever. All right, you're going to present information. You're going to say, I don't know, you say Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile, because Sprint just got bought up by T-Mobile. So, maybe you're going to explain one of them is better, and you're going to back it up, use evidence, whatever. That's persuasive. And maybe use critical thinking to come to that conclusion that you explain, but your purpose is going to be manifest for the kind of writing that it is. Are you going as far as to tell people what they should do with this information, or just telling them what your findings are? And that's going to be your difference there. So I hope that was helpful and not too confusing. For those who logged in earlier, I'm sorry you had the sound wasn't working right. It wasn't turned on. That's the short answer. Are there any other questions out there in the chat? Oh, I'm glad that helps. I do have a video that talks about critical analysis. I may not have phrased it in the same way, but that might be worth checking out depending on what it is you're writing. I first started recording these videos, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago now. So we have over 100 videos on the YouTube channel. So if you have a question, if you just scroll through the topics, you might find something there. Otherwise, it's something I can address through like a live stream or one of my videos. At this point, I might be doing 3 or 4 videos a week. So more ideas from you would be great. Well, if there's no other questions, then I think we'll call it good for today. We're about 30 minutes on this live stream, but I apologize. The sound was wrong for some of it. Please check out the latest video if this is useful for you. Otherwise, check out some other things. For sure, check out the website because I try to put everything there, links and all the things. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back here on Thursday afternoon for another live stream. So, thanks everybody. Bye.